I'm here.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday, June 17th, 2021 Curriculum Committee meeting. I would like to officially call this meeting to order. And we have Mr. Saads joining us by phone today. I would like an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And has everyone had a chance to review the May 20th meeting minutes? If you have, I will accept a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And that brings us to items for discussion and information, and we'll begin with Summer Learning Camp update with Dr. Breedlove.
Thank you very much, and welcome this morning. We have started officially our Summer Learning Camp, and I'll just jump out there and say we are off to a great start already there. I do have a short presentation, as you see, just as a reminder to everyone who may be watching and listening of what our requirements are. This same couple of slides that you've seen now last couple of curriculum committee meetings, so I'm not going to stay on them too long, but we are required to offer a 6-week summer learning camp for students that are designated as at risk, as well as other students that we may be able to bring in. Due to the shortage of teachers who signed up, we did limit it to our students who Union County Public Schools deemed as needing those additional days and fall into the term of at risk for Union County Public Schools. It is in-person instruction. It does include enrichment activities, and student participation is voluntary across the district. I do have some statistics I'll go over shortly with you, but once again, K-8 is in-person reading math for K through 2, and then reading, math, and science is part of our 3-8 curriculum. Integration of the reading camp in grades 1, 2, and 3 is a must, and it's a part of our summer learning camp as well. It is 6 weeks, 24 days. Our teachers are working 27 days. We had 2 teacher work days at the very beginning, and then we'll have a closeout teacher work day at the very end. Daily schedule, once again, elementaries starting at 7:25 in the morning, and it ends by 2:15. Students do receive breakfast and lunch if they choose those offerings. Secondary schools, 8:20 and 3:10. Once again, breakfast and lunch is served. We are offering enrichment, SEL support, small group instruction, lunch, recess, and then, of course, transition times are not included in the instructional time that we have to meet. And then this is the new part. If you look at the locations and the enrollments, we have 4 high schools, 4 middle schools, 12 elementary schools. But here's the current data that we have. Just over 5,300 students were invited to attend this year based on being at risk. Of that 5,300, 5,195 students confirmed that they would like to attend summer learning camp. As of the first 3 days, we did Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday data, 3,817 students have attended, asking questions to our site administrators, and that a lot of the students who signed up either chose not to show the first week. Many of them were already on vacation or had another camp that they are attending. If you break this down by level, 80% of our elementary students attended the first 3 days that were that had confirmed. Middle school, 66% are in attendance, and then high school, 67%. So most of our attendance is at the elementary level of our students, but we are continuing to contact families, work with those families, trying to make sure that we are getting the students into summer learning camp that need to be there. Here's our summer learning camp sites once again. And I will say, I started off by saying we were off to a great start. I know I traveled with Dr. Houlihan on the first day. We traveled to many sites. On that first day, we went to Kensington Elementary, Western Union Elementary. We went to Rayview and Shiloh Valley Primary. All of those summer sites were up and running. Students were engaged. On the first day, it was about getting to know the teacher because a lot of the students had new teachers for summer camp. Many of our teachers are different schools, but as a kind of a get to know you and starting them off on a good foot by a fun, engaging day. For example, in some of the classrooms, the teachers dressed up as camp counselors. They had made desks look like tents, and they had a fake campfire in the middle made out of construction paper and the counselors, camp counselors, the teachers, right? They were doing group readings and just having fun with the students and getting them off to a good start. So once again, a very good start for UCPS. Does it mean that everything was perfect? No. We're still working on a few logistical, getting all of our students in, number one. Number two, making sure that students who are picked up and using transportation and are taken home in a timely manner. Just as the start of any school, like normal school year, the first week we work through a lot of kinks of routes and making sure that students get on the right bus and that sort of thing. And so we definitely see things improving over the last several days, and will continue to improve into next week, where it's just normal school at that point as far as transportation and logistical items to address. So that's really my report for the first 3 days. Of course, we're in school today, and then tomorrow there's no summer learning camp. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know, like at the high school level, because there's some that are attending the learning camp and doing the EOCs, but then there's some that are just having to do credit recovery, which that's every summer, credit recovery. So do you know like what percentage is doing the EOC portion compared to credit recovery?
Yeah. Yesterday in working with some of our high schools, it varies. It could be a third full delivery needing the credit as a whole versus credit recovery in a lab, which could be anywhere between 50% and 60 to 70% of students in credit recovery only, with up to, it could be up to 50%, but that's a very high number for full delivery of the course. I visited Monroe yesterday High School and Porter Ridge High School, and they were Monroe had slightly lower numbers in the full delivery. Most of their students were in credit recovery, and that's to be expected. And in Porter Ridge was even more so, fewer students in full delivery, vast majority in the credit recovery.
Okay.
I have a question, Dr. Breedlove. So since all of the students who signed up initially are not in the summer camp, does that leave opportunity for other students who may not have been able to enroll on the first? For example, let's say a kid who's not identified as at risk and their parent or parents would have liked for them to be in the summer camp. And because the priority was those that were at risk first enrolling, since some of them are not enrolled or are there, would that provide opportunity for other children to be a part?
No, sir,
Okay.
it will not. We will stick with only serving our at-risk students across the district this time.
I think what I understood was we didn't have enough teachers sign up to participate.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Well, and some of the students, if they're on vacation 1 week, they could come back, and then we could end up having more numbers. Yeah.
And
Did a lot
keep
of them
collecting
tell that
data.
they weren't going to be there, or was it a surprise?
No, some of the site administrators knew that the parents said, look, we already have a plan for that first week, but they will be coming, or we've signed them up for a different camp, already paid for it, but we are coming to the Union County Public School. So it is a surprise on some, but there were also others that it wasn't a surprise because they told the school administration.
I know a lot of high school athletes in particular would be at a cross country camp or a track or baseball, football. So I could see that they would have to miss a week because those registrations would have been prior to knowing about our plan, especially in the high schools.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Mr. Sides, do you have a question regarding the summer learning camps?
No questions.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been extremely exciting to see the pictures and stuff from the classrooms and what our amazing teachers, come up with, to engage and make this fun for our students. So I just want to say thank you to all of our site administrators and to our teachers. It's been really, really neat to see. I think I saw an owl yesterday. They had brought in an owl, and I thought, well, gosh, I wish I had known about that. I would have gone to summer camp. But thank you to all of our teachers that did sign up to help our students. It is greatly appreciated. So the next item was a request from Mr. Gary Saads. He would like to speak towards the history and social studies guiding principles. So I will turn it over to Mr. Saads.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I don't think it's news to anyone that there is concern these days from a lot of parents, not just in Union County or North Carolina, but across the country. There are concerns about political bias of one way or another filtering into curriculum and instruction in the classrooms. There even has gone so far as some districts in North Carolina have proposed or passed an outright ban on what they consider critical race theory, or CRT. I don't agree with that approach. What I would like to offer for discussion is a more positive and proactive approach that will reinforce the philosophy I know that we have always had here at UCPS, that our instruction is fair and balanced, objective, and free of bias of any kind. And there are many subjects which there is more than one viewpoint or more than one angle to investigate. And I'm not attempting to limit good and open debate or discussion of more than one side of an issue. I just want to see that discussion is fair and balanced of all viewpoints, and that any type of political views or any injection of political viewpoint or philosophy is kept free, and it's purely instruction. And I offered as an example a guideline passed recently by the Florida State Board of Education as what I feel is a more positive and proactive approach to addressing these concerns. We've had parents most recently at our public comments have concerns about this issue, and I feel it's timely that we ask staff to allay these concerns by a positive statement that our subject matter, our curriculum, and the actual classroom instruction is fair and objective and free of any types of bias. And my proposal is to charge staff with development of a what I just called as a working title, guiding principles, particularly in the instruction regarding world U.S. history and social studies on all grade levels. And then to have staff return to this committee with their proposal for further consideration. And that's basically what I'm offering this morning.
Gary, the state board of ed is meeting right now to, I guess, firm up the social studies standards. So should those get presented first to staff so that they could come up with what you're proposing, or?
Well, I feel like a guiding principle, because it will be up to us, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Breedlove, we'll really put the meat on the bones after we have the information from the State Board of Education. And so it's really the rubber meets the road in the classroom. And that ultimately is our responsibility, that the final, what the kids are actually being taught in the classrooms are follow these guiding principles to be developed.
We are currently waiting on the unpacking documents from the state of North Carolina. Certainly.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? You got that?
Barely.
Okay. We are currently waiting on the unpacking documents from the state of North Carolina, the DPI, and certainly we will. Number one, we're obligated to teach the standards as part of the North Carolina Department of Public Education system. But with those standards, they do provide us with unpacking documents that allow us to build our curriculum. Our teams are ready and waiting on those unpacking documents for social studies standards to be able to build the curriculum. The last curriculum committee meeting, maybe it was the time before, once I stated that once those unpacking documents arrive and we are able to create our curriculum for Union County Public Schools, those will be presented to this committee first before going to the full board, so that this committee can review our curriculum. And certainly we will do as directed, or as this committee and the board wants us to go with our curriculum. And so, just having that ability and chance to get out front and present you all the curriculum, we are looking forward to doing that. And that I'm hoping at the 1st of August, we'll be able to do that, so that there is time before the start of school to get that information to you all and the full board to take a look at.
The way I envision this is, I'm sure the actual curriculum will be quality nature. My thought process is in the actual implementation in the classroom, to have a guiding principle that this curriculum and the leeway the teachers have for the implementation of this curriculum should be of a fair and balanced nature. So this is not meant to restrict the curriculum in any shape or fashion. It's more of a guiding principle as to how that curriculum is implemented in the classroom.
Mr. Saads, do you mind sharing with the committee and staff what exactly you mean by guiding principle?
As I outlined in the document, but basically in a nutshell, it is curriculum that's presented, or discussions that are had, or issues that are discussed, if there is no bias towards any particular viewpoint or with multiple ways of or differing issues connected with a historical event. Let me give you, for an example, see if this works. A discussion of the Civil War. Let's say that there's the northern view of the start or the reasoning behind the Civil War and the southern viewpoint of why they chose that path. I think it would be fair and balanced to equally discuss differing viewpoints. I don't want to just talk about the northern viewpoint as to the start of the Civil War and not include the southern philosophy and how they conflicted and that led to the Civil War. So in many historical events can be open to interpretation. And that's why I think it's important for students to understand or at least be exposed to differing viewpoints. And that can create a very healthy discussion and debate, which I think is really the lesson that history teaches us. Why did these things happen? And the bad things, hopefully we prevent them from happening again. And to understand differing viewpoints so that students can learn to draw their own conclusions or debate various aspects of the different philosophies. And that's all I'm attempting to do, that when there is more than one viewpoint or opinion on an issue, that the differing viewpoints would be considered fairly.
You mentioned earlier that that these guiding principles that you sent to the committee late last night, that you had looked at the Florida State Board of Education. Do you mind?
Yes.
Do you mind sharing what they recently adopted and what the rule states and what you're asking staff to do?
It is included in the attachment for this agenda item, but I'll go ahead and read it for those that don't have access to the information. It was so-called the DeSantis rule, which is, to quote, instruction on the required topics must be factual and objective and may not suppress or distort significant historical events such as the Holocaust, and may not define American history as something other than the creation of a new nation based largely on universal principles stated in the Declaration of Independence. That is the rule adopted by the Florida State Board of Education. Now, there are other districts, other states that have taken a different approach and basically came out and said, we ban the teaching of critical race theory in the classroom. I think that's a negative approach. I think it be more positive and proactive to state that, to include more of a clear and objective and unbiased approach to subject matter that's being discussed or is part of the curriculum.
So since you're saying that this is not a ban on critical race theory, are the guiding guiding principles that you sent to the committee and staff to consider last night, are you suggesting that that when staff does receive the unpacking documents that they should include critical race theory?
No, by no means. I'm saying that as we fill in the curriculum from the unpacking documents, that our overriding principle I'm proposing, and of course staff will have to decide the best means for implementation and actual design of something, a guiding principle along these lines, but it should be fair and balanced and objective and free of bias.
I have a question,
Yes.
Madam Chair. Excuse me. I'm looking at what was
And
said.
bias comes in many forms. There is bias from the political right. There is bias from the political left. And I don't think bias of any form has a place in the classroom. It's instruction, particularly on history. It's instruction on historical events and examining cause and effect, and also looking at different viewpoints that may have led to those events.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
And
Saads.
that's-
Mr. Reverend Kirkpatrick has a question.
And I to piggyback on that last point about different biases, because even this document is biased, if you want to be honest. When it talks about the instruction on the required topic must be factual and objective, and may not suppress or distort significant historical events such as the Holocaust, and may not define American history as something other than the creation of a new nation based largely on universal principles stated in the Declaration of Independence. When I read this, I literally started laughing. And maybe I was wrong for doing it. Because when we read this, and if we teach history properly, we understand that that's not even true. Okay, so I'm looking at the objective and what is being presented as it pertains to history. And whatever topic comes up, there's always going to be individuals who support and who do not support. As a pastor, I can preach a sermon and someone would get an interpretation that was not even my intention. And so in the hands of the wrong person or individuals, it can be contaminated as something being totally wrong. I don't think since I've been here, we've had a conversation about CRT. And from my research, there's no public school in the nation that is teaching CRT, if I'm not mistaken. And I can be corrected if I'm wrong. But I believe that we are doing all of our children a disservice if we continue to provide safe conversations and not deal with the truth of what American history is all about. We're talking about protecting the Holocaust, which is very important, very, very important. But we're not even dealing with the root of why our country is in disarray right now. This morning, I was driving in a community and I saw a flag, and it was a black and blue flag. And I've seen it before quite a few times. And I saw this flag and I looked it up when I got to my office. What is the significance of a blue and black flag? And when I did the research states that the blue and black flag was a flag that the Confederate held up to let the North know and everyone else know that we were not surrendering. Even though the war was over, it was a representation of saying that we are still standing and we are not going to surrender. In 2021, we are still dealing with this type of foolishness, and our children and our parents do not understand that the cause of all of this, it is much greater than black and white, because the stem of it all is hatred. That's where it stems from. And so our children are living in a society where they don't even understand what racism looks like. It's more than just using the N-word. It's more than just saying, calling out different colors. But at the end of the day, if we don't understand the truth of history, then we will repeat it again. So I'm not understanding why we want to favor We want to favor, because this should not even be acceptable. And I know that we have those who are all in favor of banning critical race theory and what have you. And that's because a lot of people really do not understand what it entails. It does not cause separation if it is taught properly. It brings us together as a country, as a people, to understand that what has happened, and we should not repeat it again. And our children do not understand. And I'm so sick of this political division that we have, because this is the only reason that this is a problem, because certain ones do not embrace it. And it's because of fear. We are fearing what we should be able to embrace in 2021 and deal with it. This came from a board of education that is biased to present this. And at the end of the day, when it is taught properly, guess what? Not just black people win, not just white people win, but all of us will win. And I do not believe that we are focusing on a society of having all of us to win. I don't understand how we are even trying to cover up what has happened. It happened. Did you do it? No, you did not. Did Miss Melissa do it? Did Miss Sarah do it? No, they did not. They were not there in 1865. They were not there in 1619. None of you were. None of us were. And people are not trying to blame white people for saying this is the reason why we're dealing with. But the truth of the matter is, racism, if it is not dealt with, it will continue. It will continue. Division will continue. And for some reason, I believe that there are a group of people who want it to continue. Just change the color, just change how it looks, to keep us from teaching our children the truth. So, I mean, this right here, I don't even understand how this even was brought to this conversation today. I don't understand this.
Gary,
Well-
since you're the one who brought this to the committee, do you mind answering
I would
Reverend
like to
Kirkpatrick's questions and concerns?
First of all, let me be clear. I was providing the floor for information only. I am not proposing that is what I am proposing for the committee to consider and pass. I appreciate Reverend Kirkpatrick's thoughts of the racial issues that we continue to face today. I think he would agree that discussion would be most helpful in an unbiased fashion. Now, I'm not saying that we're not going to talk about these issues, that we don't address these issues, that they are a part of our history and they're a part of our world today. And it certainly respects a discussion of those issues in an open fashion, but unbiased and objective discussion of historical and current events is I believe, to your purpose. An honest and open and unbiased discussion of the issue that you mentioned is relevant. I'm not saying pass this. I'm offering that as an example, and just as I offered as an example, some districts, some states have already passed a ban on critical race theory. I am not proposing the specifics. I am proposing a to-be-developed guideline. The discussion of topics that follow our curriculum are on an open, honest, objective, and unbiased manner. That's all I'm proposing.
Max, you a question, Mr. Saads. What is your definition of an unbiased conversation? Tell me how that looks, because I'm open.
An unbiased is meaning that it is factual in nature and a potential discussion of both of more than one viewpoint of an issue. That most issues, historical issues, have more than one viewpoint. and then an honest, factual discussion. The last thing I think any of us want is for a student to come away and have a feeling that a teacher has injected any kind of their own biases or philosophies or their own take on historical events. There is a place for an honest discussion, but I don't want it to be skewed in any way because of any interpretation or political or personal thoughts on the part of any of our instructors. To protect them, I think it is not too much to ask that it be a factual and objective discussion of events. Now, students are no doubt going to draw their own conclusions because of their family environment, any personal history, whatever they're exposed to outside of the classroom. I understand that, and it is my hope that in our areas that we control, our instruction, that they are exposed to an unbiased, multiple viewpoints of an issue and are able to learn to draw their own conclusions. Because after all, we're teaching these kids to think on their own. Really, when it comes down to it, what we're trying to do is to prepare these adults to develop their own set of lifelong principles that they're going to live by, how they're going to conduct themselves as citizens. And I think I don't want UCPS to even be perceived that we are advocating any type of particular viewpoint on a historical issue. I want that student to learn for themselves. And there are no doubt, I agree with you, Reverend Kirkpatrick, that some are going to have skewed viewpoints because of other environmental factors. I can't control that. All we can try and control is what is taught in the classroom. And I want to ensure parents that there is no type, that UCPS does not tolerate any type of particular or advocate any type of political viewpoint, either any political viewpoint or any type of particular political philosophy inside the classroom.
I believe history should not even be political. It should just be factual and just truthful. And we have made our society, and I include myself, and I say we have made it to be political. When history is taught properly, as I mentioned a few moments ago, that people will interpret whatever they want to interpret. When you deal with slavery, when you deal with the civil rights movement, when you deal with the Holocaust, when you deal with anything that affects our history, people will have their own interpretation. But that should not stop the truth from being taught to our children. It shouldn't stop the truth from being taught. And some may even dispute my statement by saying, well, history will be taught. The truth will be taught. Certain truths will be taught. Not all truths will be taught, because even as a product of public school, there were certain things that were taught to me that I did not learn about until I was in college, which I believe I should have learned earlier, but because of what was given, certain things were given to us, and there are things that I had to learn later on in life. And if I learned them earlier, I think I would have been able to understand how to appreciate others better than myself, others' religion and things of that nature without being biased, because that's the word that I hear a lot from, not just from my peers, but from other people. So I think that when we talk about this unbiased setting, when you start having a lot of people to comment and give their input, you won't win for losing. And I think that's one of the things we had a diversity committee, and they brought ideas and what have you. And a lot of people didn't want to talk about diversity, which is a part of who our country is and has always been from the very beginning. We don't want to talk about equity. Some people define that totally different from how somebody else may define it. So I'm not understanding, as I've said, and I am one person that I will have a conversation, and I'm pretty open-minded. I think I am. But when it comes to the truth of what this document is saying, I cannot even find truth in that statement that the Florida Board of Education has presented. So those are my comments.
Well, I would just say the work of the Citizens Advisory Committee, I think, is a separate issue. I am attempting to address curriculum as it is taught in the classroom. I see the work of the Citizens Advisory Committee as a separate issue that is dealing with other social dynamics which we are attempting to address with the output from that committee. What I am attempting to offer is to, in the spirit of what I'm presenting, from attempting to charge staff with a guiding principle that the curriculum we develop and is taught in the classroom is objective and unbiased and fosters a responsible discussion of issues, particularly those that may have varying viewpoints or multiple points of contention. That's all I'm attempting to ask staff to develop, that this is an overriding principle as we start to develop actual in the class instruction for our as the guiding principle as we start to develop what is taught and discussed and debated in the classroom. That's all I'm trying to do.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Saads. Dr. Breedlove, since we have not received anything from the state, if my memory is correct, and please correct me if because I don't have it in front of me, but I believe you and the social studies team and instructional coach for the county came to us in February and laid out a timeline. And I believe that timeline was you anticipated those unpacking documents in the spring so that your team could be developing curriculum over summer break. Well, we're in summer break, and you and your team and teams across the state have received nothing, correct?
That is correct. There have been delays at the state level.
Okay, so, and like Sarah mentioned earlier, they called an emergency meeting at the state board today. So I guess we'll have to see after this meeting, you know, what, if anything, the State Board of Education decided or didn't decide today, and if they did or didn't approve any K through 12 unpacking documents. But my concern and question to you and the team who came to us in February, if your timeline was to receive this in the spring so that your team could begin putting together lesson plans and activities and curriculum for Union County to deliver K through 12 lessons beginning in August, and you still haven't received anything, how long does it take for a school district like Union County to develop our lesson plans and curriculum, and you haven't even received them yet. Do you think you'll even be ready in August?
That's a great question. And here's what I will say. Obviously, it really depends on how late these unpacking documents are. Certainly, if we don't get them within a week or two prior to the start of school year, we will have no lessons, and it will be up to the individual teachers then to start the school year developing their own. All right, and that's not what we want to do. We will, though, start right away with the first standards, build the lessons that if we are to, let's say we get them in the 1st of August, we could have several weeks of lessons built certainly by the start of school. And we would have to use those teams throughout the first semester to continue to build those lessons and release them, build them, release them, so that teachers would have them.
So build the plane while we're in the air.
We've been doing that a lot, it seems, lately. Yes, ma'am. That's a good analogy.
I stole it from Dr. Houlihan. Okay, so you did say something that was concerning to me, and I think will be concerning to any parent that is at home, is that, and so I just want to give you an opportunity to restate it if I didn't hear it correctly, that if we do not receive this in time, we will allow our 2,600 teachers, or however many will be teaching history K through 12. We will allow them the liberty to write their own until we get something from the state.
Usually that would be done by a department at the high school level or by a grade level at the middle and elementary level. So I don't foresee a single teacher doing something that the rest of the teachers aren't doing in that building. Obviously, we want to continue teaching in the same manner. Policy 3-1 deals with as teachers, political viewpoints, biases, and obviously we have to teach without those biases. And when we build curriculum, even as a first-year teacher, I take the standards, I look at those standards, and then I develop lessons. What we try and do at the district level is take a lot of that pressure off of our teachers so that they are consistent across the district. And that's what to me, the biggest issue might be is the inconsistency of activities that might be done. Sometimes we can learn great things, when that happens, but we want to be able to build that curriculum and then let our teachers reach out and try and make it better with what we do. But we want to give them at least a standard set of activities and lessons that will be consistent across the district.
So I think my continued concern, based on what you said a second time around, is that the team at Weddington would develop how they're going to deliver it. The team at Porter Ridge would come up with a different way to deliver it. The team at Parkwood would come up with a different way to deliver it. So what I'm hearing is inconsistency. And so that is my concern. Next thing you know, we have another Waxhaw Elementary issue, and we're having to stop everything we're doing to deploy a human resources team over to one school. So I don't, because of the chaos and everything that's going on, there's so much political and social division. I don't feel that we are in a position to allow one school to develop their own lesson plans and then another team at another school develop their own lesson plans. So I go back to us not having time to create Union County public school lesson plans that are consistent, whether it's Waxhaw, Weddington, Cuthbertson, Parkwood, Monroe, and that we're all on the same page, and that the 9 teams are not creating their own wheel, that, you know, they're reinventing the wheel, and that we're going to be inconsistent across our 9 clusters.
Could I interject something?
Yes, Mr. Saad.
I want to make it very clear that I have every confidence in staff that I don't see this as a permeating issue. I have every confidence that staff develops curriculum that is fair and that attempts to be objective in its subject matter. I am merely providing a overall, like I said, guiding principle that when it comes down to actual implementation in the classroom, of a leeway that rightly so that our teachers have, that it passes this fairness test as an overall guideline, or this is what we want that actually ends up going out to the students to be in a fair and unbiased discussion of the topic. And that's all I'm attempting to address, to reinforce what I honestly feel that we are already doing, but that this is something that a living document that we can look to as what overall we're attempting to do in the implementation of this curriculum actually in the classroom.
Can I request something, please? So I'd like for the committee to consider this request, which is regardless of whether we have the unpacking documents by the beginning of the school year or not, we're going to have a plan. And I agree with the concerns about inconsistencies. And so I would like to ask the committee to consider that, let our staff have the chance to look at the curriculum unpacking documents, see what the state board does, come back to you all hopefully at the next meeting in July, definitely prior to the beginning of the school year, and let you know, here's where we are. Here's our curriculum that has been vetted. Obviously, by then we'll have at least maybe I'm just throwing out there, the first 9 weeks or 6 weeks kind of up there. Let the committee review that with us. And then talk about what Mr. Sides is. What are our implementation expectations? You know, when we think about professional development and how this will be delivered, we have pacing guides that go with these. We have scopes and sequence. All of this is part of our unpacking documents. Give us a chance during the next month to go through the process pending state board approval to vet all of this and then come back to this discussion. Again, regardless of whether or not we have the curriculum documents, we're going to have a plan for consistency across the board. So that's just, I'd like to at least give our staff the chance to go through that process and then come back either to this discussion or to let you know kind of what we believe is our next step for implementation.
I actually would be in favor of that. Just circling back around in July and seeing what the State Board of Education comes out of their meeting today. But I do have one comment and one question. If we do not put something in place for the first 6 weeks or the first 9 weeks, can we not use the existing curriculum that we've been using for the past 5 years or whatever, or what the teachers used last year? I mean, why do we have to reinvent the wheel the first 6 weeks or the first 9 weeks if they haven't sent us anything? Could we not just use what we had in the pacing guides for last year, 2020-21, for the first 6 weeks or 9 weeks?
I don't see why not. I think what we'd have to look at is the order in which different topics are presented, because I don't know if the flow is in the same manner from one year to the next. And that's what I'm saying is a plan B may be we need to pull from curriculum that's already been in place and reformat it or look at the timeline for delivery in a different manner. So I think that it still would serve as a foundation for any kind
Yeah,
of a
because I
backup.
haven't heard that recommended at all.
Right. And I think most districts are thinking that way to say, what do we do if we don't have anything?
Exactly. So, I just wanted to throw that out there because no one has acknowledged that we actually have a curriculum that we've been using, and why not continue using that until the state figures out what they're doing and what they're going to send us. So that was the one question. Why can't we use what we already have instead of just slapping something together and letting everyone go willy-nilly in their own bubbles and, pull stuff off the internet and, because it looks like a fun activity. And next thing you know, we're on national news again. That's happened. So I just wanted to ask that question, have they already thrown out the existing history lessons that were already taught, last school year in the first 6 weeks or 9 weeks? So that was a comment I wanted to make. The second point I wanted to ask is based on what you suggested, letting, each of the 9 clusters come up with their own 6-week plan or 9-week plan. How are you planning on managing teachers pulling activities off of a website and it not being approved or causing a community uproar?
Our school administration and our curriculum coaches manage that within our schools and just facilitating a lot of that curriculum. So, once again, having that level of vetting of the materials is going to be important, and that will need to be basically communicated out from my office and the rest of the academics team that work within that area.
So so what I just heard you say, and please feel free to correct me and say that's not what you meant, but what I think I just heard you say is as long as that team found something on the internet that they all agreed to, you're okay with it.
Yeah, any type of resource that could add to and benefit students, as long as it, once again, meets the teaching of the standard that is proposed by DPI. Certainly there is a level of what is satisfactory and what is not, and we have teachers all the time that are out looking for good material to use, and if they are successful with a lesson using that material, obviously word spreads, that becomes almost a best practice or a best activity that we want to take and populate across the district if it's good. Some lessons fall flat on their face and they're not good, and we go back to the drawing board, but we try, and the importance of creating that curriculum so that there is consistency across the board is that we don't have the adverse effect of poor curriculum.
So what I just heard, to clarify, is that your team is okay if one teacher or one team pulls an activity off the internet and it has not been approved by you or your office. You want to just let it be a test pilot, and if it falls flat on their face, then you won't share it with the other 8 clusters. But if it's successful in that cluster, you'll share it with the rest of the district.
Teachers across our system, they sign up to be educators, and our teachers are constantly looking for appropriate, good resources. That's what they do. We provide many of that, if not most of that, at the district level. But remember, the old standards were put in place in 2010, and each year we vet the resources that we create, our curriculum. We look at links to see if they're broken, see if we need to update them, see if there's more modern, contemporary materials that would be appropriate. Well, our teachers do some of that work for us in the classroom. Hey, I found this. What do you all think? And are able to do that. That's.
But you're okay with them teaching it in the classroom without it being approved by the district?
If a teacher is licensed, they have the ability to find additional materials that are appropriate for a lesson.
So what's the point in Union County Public Schools developing a curriculum if we trust 2,600 different opinions to teach whatever they want to teach?
The point is consistency across the board, but we will not stop in finding good material that's out there. The team that we have is not always going to find every great piece of material out there at the beginning of the year. We are always looking for new material as we go through that process. And so our teachers have the ability in Union County Public Schools to help us continue to get better.
I absolutely agree with you, to help us get better, which means that they would share the lesson plan with the team and the instructional coaches and your academic office before they teach it.
That would be an expectation, yes. As a principal, I had teachers come up all the time and say, hey, I'm going to try this new lesson today. Here's what it is. Will you stop in and tell me what you think? That happens across the board all the time. And that's sort of the process that we use, the pedagogical process in our classrooms. And I think that's what sets Union County Public Schools apart. There are other districts that are cookie cutter, and teachers are not allowed to attempt to be better. But in our schools, yes, they share with the administration something that works great or something that they're thinking about in their PLC meetings. That type of creation happens all the time.
So I'm just going to ask the question. Did you and your team approve the Twitter assignment that wound up in national media last year? Or was that just someone's personal opinion that what wound up in the hallways of our schools was perfectly okay because a licensed teacher came up with that Twitter assignment?
I don't know what you're asking. Did I approve?
Absolutely. I'm asking, are you okay with a licensed teacher coming up with, for example, the Twitter assignment that wound up all over the news and upset our entire community? So because it was a licensed teacher, you're perfectly okay with someone just throwing that out there because they have a license to do it? And
may I interject something before you answer, Dr. Breedlove? I think this goes to part of my point in that the state develops the core, our good people develop the meat on the bones, if you will. Where the challenge becomes is the actual classroom implementation. Now, I support a grade level, a school, a cluster, having flexibility in experimenting with curriculum items that work and may seem appropriate. What I guess my whole point was, let's make sure that flexibility they have that we've sought along the way in developing this curriculum is actually, it passes that smell test, if you will, when it's actually implemented in the classroom. Because I think that's where, Dr. Breedlove, your people can't be in every classroom every day to make sure something doesn't go haywire. But with an overall guiding principle, everybody should be able to, we want to try this, but does it pass this guiding principle that it's objective, it's fair, it's presenting the curriculum in a responsible manner to our students. And that was what I was trying to get to, the actual implementation in the classroom piece.
I think that the policy 3-1 that you mentioned is basically, isn't that basically what Gary is suggesting? Or did I mishear on policy 3-1?
Policy 3-1 deals with teachers and their approach to their instruction. It has to be unbiased, has to be without political leaning. It has to be able to interpreting that as well, allowing all sides, presenting, comparing and contrasting viewpoints.
Gary, did you hear that?
Yes.
Again, I'd like to go back to my request, which is, can we come back to this committee in July with whatever our plan is going to be? If there are concerns about inconsistencies from classroom to classroom or school to school, we need to have a
Cluster
vetting
to cluster.
cluster to cluster, and the committee wants us for especially for these standards to have a vetting process for materials. If there is no curriculum, then staff can certainly work on that. But I'd like to have the opportunity to take the next 4 weeks, see what the state does, see what we get or what we don't get, and then come back to this board for a recommendation, because
Okay.
we're just not there right now today.
Okay.
I would support that. Let's find out what the state is going to hand us or what we're going to do to cope, and whatever appropriate action is to ensure that the actual instruction in the classroom is consistent and fair. We can approach that then when we know what we're working with. Would you like that in the form of a motion?
I'm not sure
Or
that,
just an understanding?
yeah, I'm not sure that it's necessary for a motion or a vote today. I think we need to give staff time to come back to us in July.
Thank you.
Okay.
Then I would agree with that. We'll revisit the issue when we have more direction, at least on the curriculum.
And to see if we do or do not get anything from the state, and then figure out what they met on today and what they decided. And I think, and I would encourage all of us to study, make sure that we're well versed in policy 3-1.
So it would appear that we've uncovered a bigger issue in discussing this, that we are really behind the 8 ball as far as timing and direction from the State Board of Education for our curriculum for next year.
That is correct. We're in a holding pattern, and so we're kind of frozen until we can figure out what the direction the state's going to move in.
So with that being said, I don't want to just slap something together just for the sake of, having something to teach on day 1 or the first 6 weeks or 9 weeks if we already have a lesson plans from 2020-21 that can be taught until the state sends us something. And until our team, Union County Public Schools, has adequate time to develop a curriculum that we agree is good for our students, and not just trying to put something together because we feel rushed. Okay, so that brings us to 2021-22 digital resources renewals for action.
We have 3 items here. First one is Follett that is our Destiny system in our media centers. And as you can see, there are 2 items that are renewals. We have a library management system and resource management for $105,000. We also have Apex Learning, which is our credit recovery system that we use for $110,000 and $500. And then Instructure, which is our Canvas system. And that third one, we were just sent that by the state, I believe, 2 days ago. And that one is a state negotiated contract in which we belong. And so you can see there that that is a 2-year contract. We do have a grant that will be used to purchase this next year. That grant was based on the current last year's price point. And so of that $175,833.76, Union County Public Schools will have most of that paid for by the grant, and we will only be responsible for $41,243.76 of that amount. Any questions on these 3 items?
I had a question about the Follett. It says Destiny provides digital library and resource management. Is it just a management system, or does it provide like digital books K through 12? Do you mind explaining that?
Yes, ma'am. It does provide digital books, research materials that students would use on a topic like rocketry or space, anything like that.
So I know that the board has received several complaints from multiple clusters this year, parents being concerned about books that their students were required to read. And so I was just wondering, who on your team goes through this digital library and approves these books or removes books that we have received parent complaints?
Our school administration, our curriculum team, and it's a combination of our media specialist all work through reviews of the materials that are in there, trying to catch things that may be inappropriate or mislabeled, anything like that. We do our best each year to kind of canvas through those, I mean, use that word, but go through those to ensure that we are offering appropriate materials.
So when a parent or a community member comes across a digital book that we provide K through 12 in this digital library, how easy is it, or how often does your team remove those books because of the controversies?
Yes, and at any time that if there's a class book or a book that is chosen that a parent may find not appropriate for their child, we will always find an alternative book. There is some subjectivity on what is appropriate and what is not appropriate for one household to another household, and we want to make sure that we are flexible and working with those families.
So as opposed to removing a highly controversial book, you would just offer a different digital book, but keep that in the library?
Yes, ma'am. Some materials may be considered highly controversial, but are required by or on a list, for example, in an AP literature classroom, that is something that they put out the lists, and of course, once again, working with families to make sure that the materials are appropriate for that household.
Does Union County Public Schools or you or your team have the ability to remove a book from a digital library?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How often have you removed a book, and did you remove any this past school year?
I would have to ask that question. I don't know.
Okay, I would like to know that in July, if we removed any books from this digital library.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Any other questions? And I just want to be clear where my question is coming from. I sat on an appeals panel in the past year or two, and a student communicated a threat, and his plan came from a book that was found in our libraries. I don't know if it was digital, but it was clearly approved by the media department, and I think it's unfortunate that that student had access to that book so that they could develop a plan of attack on one of our schools.
Got it. Thank you.
So this is for action. You have questions?
No, I was going to say.
Okay. Okay.
I move to recommend the digital resource renewals to the full Board of Education for approval.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We will take that one item to the July meeting for these three resources. Our next meeting will be in July, and that date and whether it will be in person, I'm really going to request that if we continue these conversations, Mr. Saads, that we all need to be in person next month. And we will let the staff and committee know what the date and the time will be. If there are no other questions or comments, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much.